As reported, Russian President Vladimir Putin awarded the title of Hero of Russia to the Butcher, General Sukhram Akhmedov, in July 2025. He is considered one of the worst commanders in the military. He sent soldiers to the slaughter, lined them up in open fields under HIMARS fire, and buried officers in bureaucracy. However, after nearly 4 years of killing more Russians than Ukrainians did, his latest disaster near Dobropilya caused an uproar among the military structure, one he finally could not maneuver himself out of. The dismissal of General Sukhram Akhmedov marks one of the clearest cases in which Russian battlefield losses were driven less by Ukrainian action than by self-inflicted command failure. Fired by Vladimir Putin personally from his post as Deputy Commander-in-Chief of the Navy for coastal and land forces, Akhmedov presided over some of the most catastrophic Russian offensives. RFU News media outlet says, "It is noted that the final straw was the offensive toward Dobropilya that unfolded in several destructive phases and aimed at encircling Pokrovsk from the northeast. Initially, it relied on infiltration groups pushing forward and looking for a weakness to exploit to achieve a rapid breakthrough. While a shallow penetration was initially achieved, Ukrainian counterattacks quickly disrupted cohesion, forcing Russian units into improvised defensive holes. In the second phase, Akhmedov attempted to cling to these exposed footholds despite the absence of secure logistics. Ukrainian drones and artillery systematically dismantled remaining armor, while glide bombs and deep strikes prevented consolidation. RFU News recalls, rather than disengaging, Akhmedov ordered continued mechanized assaults. Each subsequent wave featured fewer and less advanced vehicles, progressively weaker coordination between individual Russian assault groups, and unchanged routes. An invitation for Ukrainian FPV drones. By late December, armored reserves were exhausted and assaults devolved into attacks using civilian cars and quad bikes, which were annihilated just as efficiently. The final phase saw infantry advancing on foot across open ground and even effectively cavalry-style assaults, reflecting not adaptation but the total collapse of mechanized capability in the sector. The staggering number of losses near Dobropilya of nearly 21,000 killed and wounded Russians for 4 months sealed the fate of General Akhmedov, RFU News says. This failure was not an isolated episode. In 2023, Akhmedov played a central role in the infamous Volodar offensive. There, Russian tanks were repeatedly sent uphill into prepared Ukrainian defenses. The initial phase saw armored columns advancing along narrow slopes without sufficient infantry or reconnaissance, funneling vehicles into kill zones. Ukrainian forces on higher ground exploited overlapping artillery, guided anti-tank missile teams, and drone surveillance to devastating effect. Over the course of the battle for Volodar, analysts estimate the Russian 155th Brigade lost 2,400 soldiers, constituting 80% of its pre-war strength, rendering it combat ineffective. General Akhmedov's firing illustrates a broader Russian pattern in which commanders responsible for repeated self-inflicted disasters are removed only after losses become too visible to conceal. In 4 years of war, Moscow managed to fire and reinstate even a general with the lethal record of destroying more than 23,000 Russian troops due to personal failures, RFU News reports. However, given the Russian system's tendency to recycle failed leaders rather than reform command culture, Akhmedov may yet return, posing further danger to Russia's own soldiers.
Iran's president, Masoud Pezeshkian, warned that any attack on the country's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, would be a declaration of war. The statement came after U.S. President Donald Trump called Khamenei a sick man in an interview with Politico, and said, "It's time to look for new leadership in Iran." It appeared to be the first time Trump had called for the end of Khamenei's rule in Iran. Despite having repeatedly threatened to attack Iran if the regime were to start killing protesters, Trump has held off on any immediate military action against the Islamic Republic. He has moved U.S. military assets into the region but has not specified what he might do. During a speech, Khamenei acknowledged for the first time that thousands of people had been killed, some in an inhuman, savage manner. He blamed the U.S. for the death toll, railing against Trump, whom he called a criminal, for his support of the demonstrations, and calling for strict punishment of the protesters. Axios reported that the U.S. military had been waiting for a green light from Trump to strike Iran last week, but that he decided against pulling the trigger under pressure from Israel and Arab allies. The report cited 4 U.S. officials, 2 Israeli officials, and 2 sources with knowledge of the details. An Iranian official who declined to be named due to the sensitivity of the issue told Reuters some of the heaviest clashes and highest number of deaths had been in the Iranian Kurdish areas in the country's northwest. Kurdish separatists have been active there and flare-ups have been among the most violent in recent periods of unrest. In this case, Iranian president also blamed the U.S. for the protests that have rocked Iran over the last 2 weeks and led to thousands of deaths among demonstrators. If there are hardship and constraints in the lives of the dear people of Iran, one of the main causes is the long-standing hostility and inhumane sanctions imposed by the U.S. government and its allies, Pezeshkian said. The regime is weighing its coercive capacity against growing discontent, sustaining internet shutdowns despite the economic costs. Trump may flip-flop again, as he did in June, potentially delaying military action. Long-term, 2026 tests Tehran's endurance amid worsening economic conditions, loyalty erosion within security forces, and increasing regime change talk in Washington. Without a stabilization of the economic situation, experts note Iran's options are narrowing. The IRGC money flights to Dubai and sustained blackouts suggest the regime recognizes the severity of the challenge. As one European diplomat put it, they're trying to project strength with Pezeshkian's warning, but the underlying vulnerabilities are becoming harder to mask.